Greetings from Florence, where I've spent the last few weeks studying Machiavelli, interviewing one of the top Machiavelli scholars here in Italy. And I've been reading the prints and the discourses. I've rented an apartment right over here in the exact same complex that Machiavelli used to live right here when he was the second chancellor and the secretary of the Republic. And today I will take you on a little tour of the exact same route that Machiavelli would have taken on his commute to work every morning from his place to the place that he worked. So he would come out of these doors every day, and then Machiavelli would walk across what is called the Old Bridge, which has a gorgeous view over Florence and the river. And right now, this scenery will give you not too bad an idea of what it was like for Machiavelli every morning, because not much has changed on the Old Bridge. It got a bit wider. There wasn't the skywalk built for the Medicis up there, but it was also lined with shops and hustling, bustling, people trying to scam you or sell you stuff. And the dominant industry at the time, like it is now on this bridge, was tanning. It was leather, right? That's one of the charms of Europe. Compared to America and China, the centuries don't seem to change her that much. And so Machiavelli would get off this old bridge and he would keep walking north. And finally, Machiavelli would have arrived at this gorgeous square, and he would have entered into this building right here, which is still Florence's main governmental building. And like us, he would have seen Michelangelo's David staring defiantly towards Rome, towards where the previous ruling family, the Medicis, were exiled. This is a fake David now. The real one is safe in a museum. But I wanted to take you guys on this short commute that Machiavelli would have taken just under 10 minutes every morning, because I wanted to use modern Florence to give you a sense of what it must have been like living in Machiavelli's Florence. The same kind of energy, the same kind of hustle and bustle that exists in a city that was at the time the center of not only commerce, but art, political maneuvering. And I want you to contrast that hustle and bustle with how different it is from this. This is Machiavelli's place of exile, a little farm estate that his family owned. The Medici eventually came back from their exile in Rome, and it was Machiavelli's turn to be exiled. As a secretary of the new republic, he was charged falsely of conspiring, of treason. He was locked up for about a year, sentenced to die, and it was only because of a jubilee of sorts that his sentence was eventually transformed into exile. And so he lived here in that very house, which we're going to walk through very soon. And this is where he wrote The Prince and some of his other notable works. This is why I think, by the way, it's important to travel to a place, if you have the opportunity, where an idea was formed. Because I want you guys to take a look, I don't know if you can see it, at right there, right here. That is Florence. And so in his garden, this is his garden, he can just catch a brief glimpse of a city that he so loved. And I think this is so poetic and so cruel, because Machiavelli is known for many things, being a teacher of evil. His personal life was kind of a mess. He was a whoremonger. He cheated on his wife. But what could not be faulted is his political career and how noble he acted in the position of secretary. In a time when bribery was all too common, Machiavelli did not take a single bribe throughout his entire career that we know of, which is why he ended up quite poor. So Machiavelli was a true patriot. And it must have been so upsetting to be able just to catch a glimpse of the city he was born and raised in, that he so loved, that he spent his entire political career trying to save. And in some sense, I think being exiled, where he can just catch a glimpse of Florence, was a worse sentence than being exiled to, I don't know, Siberia, to a place where he couldn't get a constant reminder every day, a small glimpse of the city that he so loved. But in some ways, I think that Machiavelli's exile was a gift. And it's a gift because Machiavelli wanted glory, he wanted eternal glory. And obviously the people who get the most glory are the philosophers, right? From ancient Greece, we might remember a Pericles, a Lycurgus, But we know, we think about Plato and Aristotle, the tragedy, and so much more. Machiavelli, because of his exile, his hand was forced. He was forced to change his channel of ambition from the political, the active life, into the contemplative life of writing books. And so without that exile, we wouldn't be talking about Machiavelli today. And this is also a gift because Machiavelli fundamentally was a patriot. He wanted to help his country. And when he couldn't do that anymore, through political action, he viewed all of his works as another way to continue his patriotism. Okay, we're now walking in the house that he lived in. This is the kitchen. And Cicero was the same. Cicero, after the Civil War, he himself was exiled, his friends were exiled or killed, and his patriotism had to find a different channel of expression than being a senator. And so he wrote most of his works in that period of exile. And I don't think Cicero or Machiavelli are anomalous here, because I think there's a whole tradition in the history of political thought where a thinker's best works would not have occurred had it not been exile that forced them out of the political world and into writing as the primary political activity. Just gotta show you guys, this is the study where he wrote The Prince in. So people like Machiavelli, people like Cicero, people like Boethius in the Asian tradition, people like Confucius, these were all, if not in full exile, in some kind of political estrangement. And it was under those circumstances of political alienation that they wrote their best works. And so this is the conversation that I want to talk about today. What is the relationship between political exile, between alienation, and thinking and thought? Do we, in other words, practically, do we require a condition of fundamental alienation from society in order to produce great works? And the thinker I want to wrestle this idea with today is Plato. Because Plato, in book 6, I believe, of his Republic, talks about the education of philosophers. And one curious condition that Plato says as a necessary condition of producing these philosophers, this was the inn and the restaurant that Machiavelli ate at, was exile. So Plato explicitly names exile as one of the conditions for producing philosophers. And the argument kind of goes like this. If you want to follow along, it's Republic 494a. And Plato asks, okay, what is a philosophical soul? A soul that's predisposed to practice philosophy. What are its qualities? Okay, quickness in learning, of course, good memory, of course, but also courage, moderation, and magnificence. Okay. This is because for Plato, philosophy is not just a science. Okay, philosophy is not something you just hold at arm's length. The end product of philosophy is not a book or a truth statement, it's a life. And so the true philosopher, the true soul that's predisposed to philosophy, not only has what we consider to be the nerdy intellectual virtues, but also the character virtues as well. The next step that Plato says is that for such a person, if their outsides matches their insides, they're going to be very tall and handsome, his words. The reason here is because one of Plato's fundamental claims is that the beautiful is the good, and this applies to people as well. The idea that your appearance tells you something about what the essence of your character is. There's a very interesting puzzle about why Socrates, who's ugly, has a beautiful soul, why Alcibiades, who's very beautiful, has an ugly soul. I'll get into that in another conversation, but anyways. The next step of the argument is to say, okay, so we got a tall and handsome genius. What caste from society, what kind of city, what kind of family is he most likely to come from? And Plato's answer here is that he's likely to come from a good city and a good family. And this is the idea of the Republic, right? That gold parents with gold in their souls, make gold children, more or less. Silver parents make silver children, bronze parents make bronze children. There's a little bit of mobility, but there's a high kind of sclerosis in genetic inheritance. Okay. And then Plato asks, in the mouth of Socrates, of course, what's going to happen to our rich, tall, and handsome genius? Is society just going to let him do philosophy? Of course not. Society is going to want him to lead. Society is going to want him to do things for that society. And even if, on the off chance, he gains a taste for doing philosophy, his friends and his family are not going to let him, if not just thinking about the personal benefits that they can accrue by him doing well in life, right? I just want to show you the beautiful landscape here. I think these were a part of the woods that Machiavelli used to walk in, but then they've now been converted to a vineyard of sorts. Okay. And so the situation you end up with is, Plato here makes a courtship analogy. The philosopher is the male, and philosophy is the female, philosophers is the male. The true suitor, okay, the one who has a true disposition of being a philosopher, he leaves philosophy, he leaves lady philosophy unwed. He ignores lady philosophy for other things, right? This is being pulled in by the city. Which means that lady philosophy is unwed, and now you're going to get illegitimate people who have second, third-rate souls who are not worthy of philosophy trying to rape her effectively. Defile is the word that is used. And so what you get is, on one hand, this maps to Plato's time, the characters in his society. On one hand, you get the sophists, okay? These are people with second-rate souls defiling philosophy. They have no business here, but because they see philosophy is unwed, they defile her and they take her forcibly. And then you have people like Alcibiades, who is this well-born, handsome, very intelligent, even with a philosophical disposition, who has been so corrupted by society that he harms society more than anyone of a lesser soul ever could. That's the kind of tragedy you end up with, given what kind of soul, what kind of person Plato thinks is naturally predisposed to doing philosophy. Okay, so what's the solution? The solution is for the truly philosophical soul to be exiled. Okay, I quote to you, this is book 6. Those who consort worthily with philosophy, some well-born and well-bred nature, may be held in check by exile. A great soul born in a little town scorns and disregards its parochial affairs, and a small group perhaps might, by natural affinity, be drawn to it from other arts which they justly disdain. And the bridle of our companion Theages also might operate as a restraint. For in the case of Theages, all other conditions were at hand for his backsliding from philosophy, but his sickly habit of body keeping him out of politics holds him back. My own case, the divine sign, is hardly worth mentioning, for I suppose it had happened to few or none before me. What Plato is listing out here are all the different tragedies of circumstance. He has a sickly body. He was born in a place where nothing happens. There's no political mobility. Or in the case of Socrates, he had a daimon, which is a spirit guide of sorts that told him not to do certain things. And one of them was not to enter into politics. And it's because of these bad things, because of these conditions of alienation and exile, are true philosophers able to escape their otherwise fate, right, of being corrupted by society. And so the answer, I think, to the question, at least according to Plato, is yes, these things are in fundamental tension, that to think one must exist in a state of alienation. But I think there are two positives, okay, that come out of this argument. One is that, like Machiavelli and Cicero, we can view our own tragedies as gifts that gives us the freedom to indulge in something greater that we otherwise wouldn't have indulged in, okay? So in my own case, I've built 2 tech startups at this point. Well, I'm building a third one now, but the first one failed miserably. And in retrospect, that was the greatest gift ever, because from that exile, I got exposed and fell in love with philosophy that I wouldn't have the patience or the interest if I was running a successful company. Now, the second company, it's quite successful now. but it's no Facebook. It's not generational. And as a result, I could leave and do philosophy now that I'm doing full time in a way that I wouldn't have been able to if it were a generational Facebook, right? In a way that would be completely unreasonable to my family, to the investors, to others, if that were the case. Now the second, and so that's the first benefit, that you can start viewing alienation as a gift to contemplate. The second thing is to remind you that, Plato is talking about the corrupt state here. Plato is talking about the corrupt state, and but there is the ideal state that is hospitable to philosophers, right? That's Callipolis. That's the object of the Republic. But even in the education of philosopher kings in the Callipolis, you'll notice that this intuition of exile is preserved in how they're educated. They're not educated by, ruling in the morning, doing philosophy in the evening. They have long periods of life where they switch from one to the other. They study, they rule, they study, they rule. And so even then, there's an intuition that you must choose, at least in this period of life, what you're going to be. However, I say this is a positive. I say this is a silver lining because it gives us perhaps a positive solution about how we can combine both the active and the contemplative, even if it's not possible in one moment in time to do both. All right, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed that. I'm also going to do another video that talks about Machiavelli and give you a better tour of the study that we just saw. So keep an eye out for that.